Good evening. It's Sunday night and time again for me to look back on the week before and talk a little bit about what's coming up. And as usual, it seems with this class, it's very appropriate once again to start off with a congratulatory message on another really outstanding discussion. And it's about 8:45 when I'm doing this, so actually some more may be coming as the night goes on. It's still not over yet, but there's a lot that people did touch on, and I thought made some really excellent points this week. The whole idea of our discussions, as you can tell, is to hopefully for me to ask one good question and for you folks to just grab it and run with it, and that has been happening almost beyond my wildest expectations here. So again, I can't thank you enough. But I also like the way that people are asking each other questions and poking and prodding around the issue, coming around with some new stuff, and I think it's bearing out the intent that for this class at least at this 400 level, we want the discussion to be not just a reporting of some readings or things like that, but a real place where you can really think, challenge each other, and where a lot of the learning is going to take place. And I think we're seeing that happen right as we're all part of it. Okay, reviewing a little bit of the things, though, that did come up. The week, as we know, was a lot based on the whole idea of how do leagues run themselves and what are they all about. And just asking that simple question of whether the NFL is 32 separate businesses or one big business got a whole bunch of answers. And what really is the answer? Well, I think we've identified what the legal answers are. But in other respects, it's kind of like, well, Bill Parcells keeps coming up this time of year. People say, well, Bill Parcells is quoted as saying, you are what your record says you are. I've always said things like, you are who you associate with. You are what people observe. That's the reality of it. And the NFL does some very, very interesting things. What do they control? Well, they control the TV contract. That's the biggest thing that they control. They make the rules. Everybody plays by the same set of rules. They do a lot of things. They're right down to regulating uniform and whether you can wear the wrong socks or your shirt has to be tucked in. This is very interesting stuff, and you can see how we have looked at sports through almost a different lens, going all the way back to baseball being the first entity recognized with an antitrust exemption. And as we've said before, the legal reasoning behind it way back when that happened was that it wasn't a business, it was a public spectacle. Well, look at, baseball has been passed out by the football phenomenon for the last few decades, but is football really a business or is it a public spectacle? Is it almost, as I've suggested in some arguments, almost a public utility and needs to be regulated sort of like the electric company gets regulated? I think there are just so many things that go into it. We could do a whole course just on the industrial organization of professional sports, not just the whole economic impact, but just the industrial organization and the legalities. And I think the football example is very good. And we've seen just so many different ideas floated about. Everybody had some really great opinions. I really appreciate the things that you guys have done here. And as I said, maybe they'll get a few more ideas over the evening, but I hope you've learned quite a bit about the legal relationships and the impact that teams and leagues have on each other, how it works as kind of one giant ecosystem almost. And that now brings me into the subject matter for the coming week, which many people started to hint at literally in the arguments they've made for things that we've talked about in the last 2 weeks. And in this week, we kind of back off a little bit from the real economic side into something that may be a little bit more fun, but I want you to think about it like an economist, and that is the whole idea of competitive balance. Is competitive balance important for the business of sport? Look at the different ways our leagues try to influence the competitive balance of their teams. The NFL has a reverse order draft. So does basketball, but they go about it differently, right? They use a lottery system to influence their reverse order draft. Go overseas into soccer, and in overseas soccer leagues, you see the system of promotion and relegation, where a soccer association, a league, is broken into tiers, and where those that finish last in the top division get sent down to a lower division the next year, and those that finish at the top of a division or lower move up. And what goes with that? Well, there's a whole bunch of rewards that go with that. If you're in the top division, let's just go to the UK, which is one where a lot of people are familiar with the Premier League, and the Premier League is now, a lot of that is on American television. You finish at the bottom of the Premier League, you get sent down to what's called the League Championship, the old second division. Well, if you finish at the top of the second division, and we won't go into the whole promotion system there, but you move up. Well, what do you do when you move up to the Premier League? The NFL, so to speak, of British soccer. Well, now you're in a higher TV contract area, a higher tax bracket, if you will. You're getting better players, bigger stadiums, more opponents, more dates, more everything. It's more valuable. What's the incentive to finish in a higher spot in your league so you can move up? Boy, it's a lot. It's I have a trick question I often ask classes, and that is, if there was, and I'll ask it to you right now, if there was one single game every year in one of the major sports worldwide that is worth the most money to the two teams playing in it, whereas the winner will take home the most, what game is that? And the answer I usually get from people when I say that is, oh, the Super Bowl. Well, it's a little bit of a trick question. It's actually the promotion final from the English League Championship to see who gets the last spot in the Premiership. It's worth a lot of money to that team. More money than the Super Bowl victory is directly worth to the winner over here. And think about that system of maintaining competitive balance. You'll see why that's the answer. Other things come into play here. We use, many of you mentioned salary caps in many different respects across the way. What are they? Are they ways of controlling profits, or are they ways of maintaining competitive balance? Is luxury taxes competitive balance or redistribution of income? And if you want to really think about it in economic terms, what is a league trying to do when it does things to influence competitive balance? Are they attempting to limit the supply of good teams to their league? Okay. Are they attempting to influence the demand that consumers have to watch their product? Which side is it? It's a thing we have to consider. In fact, leagues themselves, does the existence of a league with some economic clout, some economic power, does that limit the supply of a certain grade of quality product to the consumer, which is you and me? Is the NFL really, by limiting itself to 32 franchises, controlling the supply side of football? Something to think about. So these are the issues that you're going to come up with this week, and I really want you to actually look at it with that economist lens, but I really want you to look at it and have some fun with it too. We all complain about, what happens with our favorite team. But look again, I'll stick with the NFL again, right, because we're in the middle of football season, but it's almost gotten to the point where football season never stops, because all we hear about is, as soon as football season ends, what do we start hearing about? The draft, right? And it even goes into the NBA. You get tired of listening about free agency and the draft and all these things. These are the leagues at work managing themselves, and yet us as consumers, we just devour it and eat it up. Have they created even more demand? Is this really an interesting phenomena where they have actually created demand for us to consume the workings of their controlling the rest of the league? I think it's a very interesting question. So that being said, keep it up and keep going the way you've been going. I can't ask for any more. The other thing you might be wondering tonight too is we're in week 4, and as I kind of alluded to in the beginning of the mod, I do things little differently. And all of our work has been taking place in discussion. Next week, we're going to come into a situation where we have what I will call a midterm exercise, right? I do it in week 5 instead of week 4. It just kind of moves things a little bit differently and allows people maybe to be working on midterm exams in the other classes, and we'll do it a little later. But I'm going to give you a little preview. We have a very interesting question for you to work on. It was actually commented on by a major professional sports owner who thought it was a really good question and exercise to use. So be on the lookout for it. But it's going to talk about things that take into competitive balance, management, all those kind of things. And that's where you're going to get your first chance of kind of rolling things up into a package where you look back at what we've discussed before and where it comes now. So thank you again for the work. I hope we're getting a lot out of this course. As usual, I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm even getting ideas. Your discussions have been strong enough to where I'm getting ideas for how we can use that to strengthen further classes. I think that's a pretty high compliment, and I want you to understand that. And I look forward to working with you for another week. Okay, and as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I try to respond right away, and that's it. Thanks again.